My name is Nicki Boyd. I am the curator of mammals, ambassadors, and applied behavior at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. Y'all, if you know me at all, then you know that my favorite thing about zoos and aquariums, the stuff we talk about every week on this podcast, is the cool, funky conservation work that gets done at them and gets funded out in the wild by them. And just, anytime I can turn one of these episodes into a conversation about conservation, I do it happily. I love to do it. Well, okay, that's one of my favorite things at zoos. The other thing that is my favorite thing about zoos, because we all know I have more than one favorite always, is really stinking adorable animals that I love. And so when a former guest and good friend of mine and of the pod, Nicki Boyd from the San Diego Zoo, reached out to me suggesting that we have a conversation about how you can inspire people to care about conservation at zoos, and also how that can then get applied to actually helping conserving the same species in the wild. Yeah, to say that I was on board is an understatement. And, the truth is, while I would have done this about any animal, Nicki and I both share a passion for red pandas. So, this is going to be a really cool chat with our friend Nicki Boyd from the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance that looks at how we can fill the knowledge gap of people as they come to zoos and teach them about how to help conserve red pandas in the wild. And we're going to hit it from a couple different perspectives. So you're going to hear about the red pandas at the San Diego Zoo. You're welcome. We're going to talk about what they can do and how they serve as ambassadors and all the amazing stuff that just having pandas that people can see makes a difference. Then we're going to talk about how you inspire those people to care about our friends at Red Panda Network who are out in Nepal actually saving this species. And then we're going to talk about a third element of it that's actually a new element to this puzzle that I am really excited about. So all of this is very interesting, very fun, very nerdy in the best way. And I will tell y'all, even as somebody who is deeply invested in red panda conservation, I learned some stuff in this episode that sent me over the edge. At one point, Nicki just had to laugh because I was trying not to verbally interrupt, but I was like wiggling my hands and dancing like an idiot. So, sorry for that, Nicki, but no, it's so cool. It's so exciting. So I am going to turn this over now to my interview with Nicki Boyd of the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, Red Panda Network, and another thing we'll talk about soon.
I'm based at the San Diego Zoo. We have the two parks. And so that means I get to work with a little bit of everything. Work with the curator of mammals is my newest role, so super excited to have that opportunity to work with some of the big species. We just got a new male elephant in, a new male giraffe, and a new rhino yesterday. So Lots of fun. I know, very exciting. So I work with a variety of species in all the ambassador teams. So we have 4 ambassador teams here at the zoo. And then, the applied behavior program is the zoo-wide animal training program. So I get to, help with training, whether it's birds, mammals, or reptiles. So I always say I have the best job at the zoo.
I agree. That's just, oh, that's so much good stuff. Yeah. And of course, when we're talking about the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance and the zoo in particular, it is the world famous San Diego Zoo. And I love that y'all use that like in branding and stuff, because it's so true and it's such an earned title. Every time anyone asks me my favorite zoo that I've been to, and I've been to close to 180 now.
170? Yeah, okay.
It's always San Diego. I get bored saying it sometimes, but y'all it is amazing. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being on the podcast. Always appreciate our time. And, even though we could talk about all that fun new stuff, very specifically, you reached out to me because you want to share about how there are all these different ways to help save red pandas, whether we're talking about in the wild or in zoos. And you are such a unique person to help with this because you get to do so in 3 different ways. So let's start off by talking about the red pandas at the zoo and what you're doing there with the pandas and how that can help conservation.
Well, thank you. When I started 32 years ago, I joke I started when I was 5, but I was a keeper with our red pandas and just fell in love with the species, just like you have.
Yes.
And I went to a conference and I saw a guy with a giant banner outside at a booth saying, "Help save the red panda." And I was like, I want to do that. And that was Brian Williams, and he was the founder of Red Panda Network. And as we built a relationship and he came and helped, I helped him actually schmooze like donors for Red Panda Network with our red pandas here at San Diego Zoo, just educating them and making them fall in love with the species. It's hard not to. He asked me to be a founding board member. And so we've been Red Panda Network Incorporated for 17 years now. And so we focus most of our work in Nepal. And my goal, from the San Diego Zoo perspective, and we are a conservation partner with Red Panda Network here at San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. And we have been for many years, thanks to me kind of championing it. But, red pandas are very popular here. We have 4 individuals here at the San Diego Zoo, and we're one of the first zoos to ever have them in the United States. And so people just fall in love with them. They're the original panda. I call them the OG. I guess we should call them the OP, but discovered 50 years before giant pandas. And they live in such a critical hotspot. I think that's one of the information gaps that we're trying to fill, is teaching people that not only protecting red pandas if you support red panda conservation, but the Himalayas impact like 500 million people. So they're quoted as protecting 1/5 of the world's clean air and clean water. And so red pandas kind of become this flagship species that help the world. We want to sequester carbon and saving these forests for the animals, and restoration work that we're doing over there really helps conserve red panda habitats. So most people who come, they love to see the red panda. I met a young girl today. She's like, "It's my favorite animal." And the next girl next to her was like, "It's mine too." And so they had their red panda shirts on, and, you've got pandemonium when it comes to red pandas a lot of times. I mean, the giant pandas are pretty awesome too. I've worked with them as well. But red pandas just have a really special place in my heart because I've taken care of them for so long and been able to conserve them. And so, as you'll hear through this podcast, I'm working in a couple different ways. But at San Diego, I think that the educational message and that connection people make, not everyone's going to get to see red pandas in the wild. I went to Nepal last year. I didn't even see them. Looking for them with guides, they're that hard to find. So getting to see one in the zoo really helps you see their personality and just fall in love with them.
It really does. And, since we're talking about the zoo aspect of it right now, I want you to have this moment to illustrate exactly how that works by talking about the 4 pandas that are there, sharing a little bit about their personalities, their behaviors. And I don't care if you start with her or not, but obviously I need to know about our little baby because this is just so exciting. I guess she's not that little anymore, but
Yes, little Pavitra. We call her Pavi for short. Yeah. So we do have Pavitra, Adira, Lucas, and Cola. And Lucas and Cola came from Cincinnati Zoo, which has an amazing breeding program for red pandas. And one of the places I got to go. And I think I actually met Cola before he even came in,
Nice.
unknowingly that he was going to come to the zoo. And we all worked together with the species survival program through AZA, which is, as most people probably listening know, it's our accrediting body, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And so these four are very near and dear. Now that I'm curator mammals, the Pavi and Adira actually live in the Wildlife Explorers Base Camp. So they have moved over there.
I did not know that.
Yes, because the canyon habitat's under construction. So they're back in, where I started and what's the new children's zoo. And then Cola, due to some construction. So they're moving out temporarily. Cola's going to move up towards Animals in Action and one of our open habitats up there. So that team is super excited. So I'm just spreading the love with all of my teams to be able to take care of this amazing species. And so, eventually Adira and Lucas will have another breeding recommendation per SSP recommendation. So maybe we'll have more babies. But Pavitra is actually a little bit bigger than her mom already, but mom's still the boss. So I was over there today, and when mom wants the bamboo, she kind of nudges Pavitra out of the way. And so it's funny them crossing over the branches together. It's definitely like a teenager with her mom, because she's showing signs of now it's time for her to move on. And so she's probably going to get her own space as well, and a breeding recommendation for herself now that she's maturing. So Pavi's not our little baby girl anymore. She's all grown up, but she's kind of like a teenager at this point.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to eventually, I need to get back out there. You know that. I say that all the time. But in particular, because, I know Lucas from Cincinnati and I know Adira from Toronto. I got to hang out with both of them when I did episodes there. And they're both near and dear to my heart. And the fact that they had their own baby, I'm like, oh, that's so good. I
coming full circle.
Yeah, it's just so cool. And I love that she's developing this little rebel personality already. That's so fun. Because I feel like Adira's very when I knew Adira, now she was still very young, so maybe this has changed, but she was not the most confident girl, and she was very shy and very quiet. And it sounds like she's definitely grown into a more confident adult out there.
Yeah. I mean, motherhood will make you do that, right? Like, she was a great mom. Like, we were, it was first time mom. We weren't sure. She's pretty young herself, and she did everything right. She, it was really interesting. She brought her out and put her in one of the outside dens. And we were like, oh no, it's summertime. Is it going to be too hot? And so we test the temperature. We kind of got in there and just put a hand on the baby. Baby was not hot to the touch. It was a very cool cave. And mom would go in and take a nap. Then she'd come back out, and she would almost, as if she was looking to make sure she wasn't going to lead anyone to her baby, she came out and she scoped out the habitat and made sure nobody's looking before going straight to the baby, and then go check on the baby, let the baby nurse. And so we were like, do we intervene? Do we put the baby back in the air-conditioned bedroom, or just keep an eye on it? And sure enough, when she was ready, she moved her back in. I think she just needed a little mom break. But we were watching these natural behaviors and observing like what they would probably do in the wild. So they wouldn't lead a predator straight to the den. They would scope out their habitat first before going to the den. And so it was really cool observations. And we even got on video when the baby starts to wean, they will chew up some bamboo, and they'll do this bamboo feeding. So the baby will be almost looks like it's suckling off the mom's mouth. And it was recorded in the Cologne Zoo in the Biology of Red Panda book by Angela Gladstone, who's our chair of Red Panda Network. And we got it on video, and my keepers were like, what is happening? And in the book, it says that they'll do this behavior of mom chews up bamboo and the baby will eat it. And it's the way to wean off of milk and start eating bamboo. And they're like, it happened for 2 minutes. And in the book, it says, we saw this at the Cologne Zoo for 2 minutes. And I was like, I have the answer to you. So sometimes it's good to get the old hardback book out and open it up, and don't look on the internet for everything. But there's some great information, documentation of, observations that we're making in managed care that we can apply to maybe wild species or conservation work down the road. But it was really cool to watch Adira blossom as a mother.
That is wonderful. I love that so much. And then tell everyone a little bit about Lucas, because he's just such a special goober.
Yes, he is. I think, he was so cute. And, he came from Cincinnati and, normally he would move out and they're not a social species, but, I think, at Cincinnati, they had some together. And so it was a little bit before Adira came in. And then I joke when Adira came in and we introduced him for breeding, he was sitting on the branches like, oh, just staring at her. Like he was just like longingly like, that's my girlfriend. So, he was very happy to have another red panda with him again. And, he's maturing now too. He came in, he was pretty young, but yeah, at first she was not impressed, and it took some wooing to get her to be impressed by Lucas. Like you said, he was a little bit of a goober, but I think he's maturing into a nice, very successful male red panda now. So happy to see that.
Yeah. Well, and I remember one of the things that you told me when we were just discussing red pandas, because that's what we do in our friendship, is that it's very important to you that the red pandas at the San Diego Zoo are red pandas, and that you really, in the way that y'all work to train them and to set them up for success with the, with their habitats and with how far you go with training and human interaction with them and stuff, that it's very important to you that at the end of the day, they show panda behaviors.
Yes.
And it sounds to me like, first of all, you're knocking that out of the park, especially getting that video of Adira. That's amazing. But why is that important to you in terms of what we're talking about here, which is, again, sharing the conservation message of red pandas at a zoo? All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
Yeah, I mean, zoos, a lot of the species we have are assurance populations. They live in such a harsh climate and terrain in the Himalayas. It's hard to know exactly how many are left. The estimates are between 2,500 and 10,000. Unfortunately, if it's closer to 2,500, that's pretty scary. That's about how many giant pandas are left. And so I think that even if they're in managed care, that they have environmental cues and they rely on their senses of exploring their habitat, that's really important. So we do a lot of what we call outcome-based husbandry, so that the animals have reliable signals that normally maybe they would know in the wild. So let's say it's raining, animal knows how to find shelter. Here we kind of simulate and create experiences. And so, for instance, with Pavitra and Adira, a mother would want to push her cub off at some point and be like, okay, time to go, time to move on. And so we're watching those behaviors and we're seeing them. And then we're going to take the opportunity to, why would a panda leave its mom? Obviously weaning, but also maybe resources are getting depleted. And so we need to set Pavitra up to be able to move to her own space with more resources. So sometimes we can diminish some of the resources. Obviously, we're going to feed them and make sure they're taken well care of. But for some of the species, we've reduced some of the plants. Maybe they don't get the best of their favorite food items. They get their food and everything. But then when we move them to a new space, they get this lush environment with all the resources and all their favorite things. And it's like, this is why I moved. And so as we move habitats, we create an experience around moving, try to simulate why they would move in the wild. And so these are just some examples of how we manage, the wildlife here. We have a lot of seasonal outcome-based husbandry things as well. So it's a lot of fun to let red pandas be red pandas. And then they have a relationship with their environment and their staff. We do training and we do a lot of outcome or operant condition behaviors or voluntary injections or crating, getting on a scale. But then when we're not there, we want them to be searching their habitat. So we create different foraging opportunities. We can have, maybe a red panda would have, a bird migration going through there. So there may be chances for us to put nests or feathers or things out in their space as if the birds were migrating through, or it's springtime and birds are nesting. So we do focus a lot on environmental cues to manage our red pandas.
And do you think that people, even though the average zoo guest doesn't know that they're seeing, all of what you just described.
Right.
Do you think that it helps with the authenticity and it helps them connect more if they see an animal that is, obviously wildly charismatic, and they're seeing the most, for lack of a better word, I guess, authentic version of it?
Yeah, people love to see animals doing natural behavior. And I know we're trying to flip enrichment on its head. So we're calling it an experience versus giving, a panda a ball with holes cut in it that they have to roll around to get the food to fall out. So that's kind of the traditional enrichment, was to extend foraging time. But now we can be strategic and, they eat a lot of bamboo, for instance. So they spend a lot of their time eating bamboo. So we have all these elevated platforms so we design the habitat to give them, this canopy space that they love. So they hardly ever have to come down on the ground. They have this, whole circuit that they can do. And then the bamboo is up high. So people see them elevated on a branch eating bamboo, and it's very naturalistic. And so when I was over there today, people were just loving watching the two. And of course, they're crepuscular, so they're active in more of the dawn and dusk. So it was around 10 a.m., but we had resurfaced their habitat and given them all the fresh bamboo. So they're very active in eating. And there was just crowds of people, and they're obviously a fan favorite. And just being active and moving around, people just love to see that.
That's so cool. Yeah. I know I love to see it. You don't have to work hard to convince me on this one. Very cool. So it sounds like the zoo and you and your role at the zoo is doing a lot to promote a love of red pandas and a compassion for red pandas. And then when it turns to the actual conservation thing, how do you turn fandas into being interested in conservation, especially through something like Red Panda Network that you're also a part of?
Yeah. So Red Panda Network has really evolved since we started it a long time ago. And we have, of course, great campaigns like International Red Panda Day. We just started a campaign where we're going to do Run for Red Pandas, where people can do their own fundraiser, and it's a month-long opportunity. And so, we try to hit it in a variety of ways. So if kids want to get involved, we have these fun activity packets on the website. And so teachers or zoos or summer camps, anyone wants an activity packet, they can download it for free and get the younger kids involved. They can paint or, cut out a red panda mask and color it. They can become a panda ranger. And we're finding kids are donating their birthday party money to Red Panda Conservation. And so we start we've got the future generations of conservationists. We start with some fun activities. Kids just love it. After Red came out and Kung Fu Panda and all the cartoons with red pandas, it's really kind of elevated them. It's probably the number one plush that we sell. Who wouldn't want the cutest little red panda plush? I'm looking up because I have them all around. Yes,
I'm holding one up right now, but I have more.
I can see 2, 3 in my office right now. So, kids just love holding on to the plushes. And then, as you grow older, the teenagers love them. There's all this anime around Red Panda. They're a little more prominent at zoos, so you can see them at your local zoos. So a lot of people go and fall in love with them at zoos. And so we have some really easy campaigns where if you donate $1, it can plant a tree. So we had a Red Plant a Home for Red Panda campaign, and every dollar planted a tree, because we just plant little saplings, of course, and so that was very successful, and people feel like they're giving back. And again, kind of explaining that, sequestering carbon and how trees help, not just have a home for a red panda, but they can help clean the air and reduce the climate change effects of our deforestation efforts. And the work with Red Panda Network, goes way above and beyond just planting trees. But to your point, to getting people involved, we engage them in a variety of ways. People want to help people. So sometimes we're telling them about our community-based conservation work and the teams of people in Nepal. Some people want to do an eco trip. So we have that for for zookeepers as well as general public. They can go to Nepal and go on this amazing trip. That not only kind of inspires you to see the space, you could get to plant a tree, you get to go to a tea house where the tea is grown and supports the community there. In Nepal, where 25% of the wild red panda population is, they actually, the eco trips and the biggest, the domestic product of the country.
Gross domestic product, I think.
Yeah, the gross GDP is ecotourism.
Yep.
And so by having that option for the community to make money to save the forest is a win-win. So they make money and they want to preserve the forest so that people want to come see it, and they learn how to do tour guides. They get to take care of the nurseries that plant the plants. There's all these different ways we engage the community. They make handicrafts that we sell at zoos. And so they're proud of their natural heritage. And so they get to preserve it. And, it's a poorer country. So they do cut a lot of the trees down for fuel, for their, cooking and heating their homes. But now that we're raising this conservation money, we see these challenges and we can combat them with fuel efficient cook stoves. Their livestock can overgraze red panda habitat. So we teach them how to make corrals so they don't have to overgraze. And then when they're spending less time out there cutting the wood, then they can actually learn how to, maybe go to school or grow their own crops or do things that support them even more. So I remember just walking through the airport in Nepal, and I had a Red Panda button on, and somebody said, "Oh, you're with Red Panda Network. Thank you for what you're doing for our country." And so it was really just a genuine good feeling to help the community there. And it's the support of all of the people who come to the zoos, or the zoos can also support red panda conservation. But it takes, this global effort to save the red panda. And so that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is being a part of that process and constantly looking at the next thing. Now we've done this. How do we keep getting people engaged and wanting to do conservation? And then let's show them what it does. And then we have that success. And we're even scaling this to other Red Panda range countries. Like Bhutan is now modeling some of their conservation work after what Red Panda Network's doing in Nepal. So it's really gaining a lot of momentum.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct?
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
That's awesome. And I mean, it rightly should. It's a wonderful organization that I know when I talk to a lot of conservationists, they lift it up as Red Panda Network being a model that they should follow for whatever species they're trying to save, especially with their community-based conservation like you were talking about. I remember when I first really got interested in Red Panda Network, it was right around the cook stove thing was happening. And I remember looking at it, and I'm not even going to lie to you. I was like, why the heck should I give money to humans having stoves? I want to give money to save red pandas. The appeal did not make a lot of sense to me back then. Now, my listeners know this, but for anybody who's listening because of you being on here, I did not come from a conservation background. I'm a musician, and it made no sense to me. But I read about it, and and Red Panda Network does a great job communicating what they're doing. I'm proud to be a writing volunteer for Red Panda Network. And I was blown away by how much sense it made once I understood it and how important that was. But if you had told me, okay, John, we're going to give you a bunch of money to go save red pandas, cook stoves would have never crossed the top 100 thoughts in my mind.
It's actually a strategy that we're using in a lot of different areas, like South America as well. And it not only helps burn the fuel more efficiently, it reduces the smoke in the air for the women mostly that are cooking the food, and it reduces the respiratory disease and problems that they're having, and just the irritation. Imagine like working around a campfire all the time. The wind blows a certain way. It's in the house usually because it's very cold up there. It might heat the house a little bit, but you're breathing in that smoke. And so it is definitely like also a One Health approach, which is a big conservation strategy that has been successful. But yeah, I'm very proud to hear that you say people use us as a model, because when I was starting, I was like, well, let's look at Cheetah Conservation Fund and let's look at Snow Leopard Trust and what are they doing? And so we've modeled things and looked at what other people are doing. And there is a universal strategy for conservation standards that I've been trained to go through, and you model out your results chain, and you have your threats and your strategies and your objectives, and it's a very thoughtful process. So it is really fun to kind of put it all together. And as I'm going through the training here at San Diego Zoo, I'm using Red Panda Network as my model, and thus driving conservation funds from San Diego Zoo to Red Panda Network. And, the strategies that we have in our strategic plan for Red Panda Network are just, you can result them out in a chain and see what's being successful. And then if some communities, maybe the government agencies aren't as willing to work with you as some others. And so you might hit a roadblock. And so it's like, okay, now you have to do another strategy. How do I get them on board? And, education's a powerful tool, but it's a complicated yet similar process to conservation work all around the world.
That's really cool. Yeah, I really like that. And yeah, it is. I will tell you, it is amazing. So I do, on average, 4 to 5 interviews a month for the podcast. And I always ask for a conservation organization at the end. And not all of my episodes, not even half of my episodes involve red panda keepers. But I am amazed at how much I will spend 45 minutes talking to somebody about the cheetahs and the tapirs that they take care of, whatever. And then at the end, I'm like, what conservation organization do you want to give a shout out to? And they go, Red Panda Network. And I'm like,
really?
That's
awesome.
Amazing. It happens all the time. And I think some of them are just kissing my butt because I like red pandas so much.
Yes.
But some of them,
it is your signature animal on your cover, but
it is. But yeah, no, that is something I think is really cool. And now there's another thing that's going to be happening that is going to help conserve red pandas that you are shockingly a big part of. But the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the accreditation body that you were talking about earlier, has officially launched a Red Panda SAFE program. SAFE meaning saving animals from extinction. And I'm so excited about this. I'm also a little surprised by it because most species have an SSP or a SAFE, and now there's going to be a Red Panda SSP and a Red Panda SAFE, which I think is interesting, shows that they're getting all the love. So can you talk about what's been going on with the SAFE program so far?
Sure. So I'm also on the steering committee for the SSP for Red Pandas. And I think what AZA was hoping to do is the SAFE program is kind of taking the responsibility of conservation and fundraising off of the SSP. So the SSP can focus on population management, and then AZA can also use SAFE to kind of track and leverage how much zoos are supporting conservation, because we all know we're doing it, but there wasn't a really good mechanism to kind of, track and kind of educate the general public of how much we're doing in conservation, and then also scale it up, like continue to drive and push harder and do more. So Red Panda is the 41st SAFE program. We put the application in early on, but there's a lot of species with like elephants and rhino and cheetah that they had a lot of top 10s, and then we finally threw our hat back in the ring. It got approved in the initial top 50 as, yes, it's really good species to protect, but then nobody really championed it. And so this year we reapplied. Sarah Glass, who runs the SSP, said, "Hey, would you like to be the program leader?" And I was like, "Yes." And I have a great partner, Dr. Shafqat Khan, who's now at the Pittsburgh Zoo, who he goes to Nepal and works with our Red Panda team. He's a restoration expert. And so he's really a big help, and he's reached out to a lot of zoos. We have about 15 institutional partners. And so my goal is to teach zoos how they can support red panda conservation even more. So I have, luckily, AZA tracked the last 5 years of red panda conservation. So now I have a target to beat so that I can show how much the Red Panda SAFE program is increasing knowledge. And then we have these fun research projects too. So you've heard of like canopy, bridges that go over overpasses or roads.
Mm-hmm.
We want to model that and maybe use AZA zoos to kind of help as a research project to see if red pandas will use a canopy bridge, and then use that for conservation efforts in Nepal, because the anthropogenic impacts of red pandas. So roads going through, red pandas avoid roads. And so can they, luckily we're not seeing a lot hit by cars, but we also, even if there's resources, my research student, the master's program, with the AIP master's program, shows that red pandas will avoid heavily, trafficked roads. And so if we can build these canopy bridges, can we bridge the gap to increase genetic diversity, to, reduce the bottlenecks of populations, to create corridors? Red Panda Network has already helped work with restoration to create some corridors to help populations not be so isolated. I saw you get really excited about that. Did you want to add something about that?
But that's just so cool, because I know, like you said, Red Panda Network has done a lot to try. So habitat fragmentation is obviously a huge issue for red pandas. And it cuts down, like you said, genetic diversity, and also even just opportunities to find mates, because you're right, they're going to stay away from the roads.
Right.
And so the idea of using an overpass, kind of like, I've heard about wildlife overpasses. As a matter of fact, later this month, they're going to start open construction on the largest one ever in the United States in LA, which was inspired by that mountain lion P22. It's amazing. But the idea of applying that to the various fragmented habitats in Nepal is amazing to me. And I already know, I know we don't have, I'm not a scientist, I don't have the research, but I can tell you that at the Philadelphia Zoo, they have a big overpass between two exhibits that they open up, and the pandas go through it all the time. At Greensboro Science Center, they have 2 of them, and the pandas use them religiously. I know for a fact that in those situations, pandas are willing to do this. So when you suggested it, I'm like, yeah, you obviously need to do the research and take it further. But holy crap, what a great idea where there's already evidence that it will work. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear that.
I know. I just wrote those zoos down so I can reach out to them. So nice, that's what, Red Panda Safe, I think, can connect all of us. And thank you to you too, because, you have that great connection, which is why I was so excited to do this podcast again and really help bridge that knowledge gap of what we can do and what we're planning to do and get people excited about it. So, I encourage people to go visit redpandanetwork.org. And then if you're an AZA member, get involved with Red Panda Safe if you can. I've had, 15 zoos like raise their hand and say, we want to be institutional partners right off the bat. I've had a handful of people say, I want to help with the steering committee, even yourself, John. So I'm going to figure out a way to get you in there. And there are people who are just super excited to take it to the next level. And that's what is really exciting about Red Panda Safe, is that it can really help mobilize and make zoos aware of how they can help and get their, members and guests and donors to be excited about a part of it. Zoo Boise just gave us $90,000. They're building a brand new red panda complex. And so it was very unexpected. We didn't have to apply for a grant or work super hard for it. And we just were so excited because it just allows us to continue that great work and scale it to, more spaces of red panda habitat that aren't managed. More than 50% of red pandas are outside of managed spaces, so they're not protected. And so we do anti-poaching campaigns and why a panda doesn't make a good pet. And you don't see it a lot here in the States, but there are places that do traffic wildlife for the pet trade. And so we're trying to educate people on all the reasons that you should protect red panda, and luckily. They're really hard to get to, and it's harder to go find a red panda, but unfortunately we still do get trafficked pandas, and we get called when there's a confiscation, and we try to help get them back into the wild. So that's something that zoos really help with too, is husbandry care. I've helped some confiscated pandas, that weren't eating really well. We have zoo vet advisors that can help with how to treat a red panda. We also we know what they're susceptible to. So they're very susceptible to canine distemper. So how they should be vaccinated, or maybe you're vaccinating the dogs in the community. We do a whole rabies vaccination campaign. So the ways to help Red Panda are I want to say endless, but it's vast. And so there's something for everybody, even if it's a cook stove that you don't understand why at first. But yeah, Red Panda Safe is going to be just it's going to take it to a whole nother level. So I'm super excited about it.
That is really cool. And I love that I get to have this explanation on the podcast, because I'm not going to lie, I've actually had a lot of people ask me, well, but red pandas are still an SSP species, because a lot of the smaller ones are kind of transitioning from an SSP to a safe or vice versa based on like population. I know there's a lot of that going on right now. So it's really cool to hear what the plan is and why it makes sense to have both. And I'm fully sold.
Yeah, it's like really, if you think of it as two different things. So the SAFE program is really just, the conservation arm of AZA. The SSP changeover was really to kind of manage populations that made sense, and that we can really invest the population biologist time, and everyone who works at a zoo is usually very busy. And so which populations make the most sense to manage as an SSP, or is it a provisional? And so there's certain criteria for an SSP that has nothing to do with SAFE. But so think of them as it's like SAFE is a whole nother arm. And there are, like, cheetah has a SSP and a SAFE program. So, African penguins have an SSP and a SAFE program. So there are multiple arms. And I think AZA recognized the fact that we could do better and make sure that we're doing more conservation work. And so they have their own goals through the SAFE program. And Dr. Jackie Ogden, who was one of my bosses here at San Diego, she was one of the propelling leaders for SAFE. And so I knew it was in great hands. And as they launched it, they were trying to get people to understand how they can do more with conservation. And then also AZ's got a little pressure, like, you should be, this should be a percentage of what you're doing. And so that we can share with the world all the good work that we're doing that maybe they don't all know about. So that's another knowledge gap that I think Red Panda Safe is going to help fill.
That is really cool, because that is something that I am constantly talking about on this podcast. I hear about these stories that are amazing, and I share them, and I only hear about them because, like, someone from a program contacts me, like, almost like, like they're allowed to, but it's almost like, hey, I don't know if you've heard about this. And I never have. Or like, I was at the AAZV conference this last year, and there was this whole thing about how a bunch of zoos had contributed populations of bongo to rewilding them. And here I am, a person who does a Zoo News episode every week, who is completely invested in this world, and also who has people sending me. I get at least 16 to 20 people sending me stories that they've seen each week, and nobody had heard of it. And when I talked about it on the podcast, everyone was like, that's amazing. And it's like, how are all these different facilities that did this not talking about it? And so I think getting that spotlight on there and having dedicated SAFE programs to not just doing the work, but educating about it and sharing it and filling that knowledge gap, like you said, is a brilliant idea.
Yes, for sure. Was that the program in Kenya with bongo? Yeah. Or I know I was actually in Kenya, and they had like this big field, and the bongo would come up sometimes for feeding. And then they were like, you wouldn't even see them most of the time because they were out in the field. But that was a long time ago. So it's super cool that, zoos need to be able to tell these great stories. And a lot of people love hoofstock too. So there are some great hoofstock stories, and, the world is shrinking, people are expanding, and the wild spaces are shrinking, I should say. And so there's not a whole lot of wild left. So we are definitely managing it. And I see a big role for zoos in the future, helping share the knowledge for what we learn in zoos, and also those assurance populations and the husbandry. There's a huge crossover, and we work with a lot of conservation partners. So it's really exciting to be able to tell the story, to be on your podcast, and to let people understand, another amazing species of red panda conservation. But, you could put in bongo, you could put in cheetah, you could put in what we're talking about, and that's happening at a lot of zoos. So it's just, I love shouting it from the rooftops of what good work zoos do, because they're really necessary. And so thank you for sharing the word.
Of course, that's what we do here. I love it. But I can't let you go yet, because you still owe me. It's still Rossifari. I don't care that you came on here to talk about red pandas and that you asked to do this. You still owe me. It's time now, don't you know? we've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Okay, so funny thing happened today. So we were looking at a couple of our burrowing owls, and I was touring around one of the new business best practices managers at the San Diego Zoo, and there was a pile of, I called it, I said, it looks like zebra poop in the habitat. And so the wildlife care specialist came out and said, burrowing owls, when it's breeding season, they will take dung from hoofstock and put it right outside their burrow so that the insects come and eat it, and then they don't have to go very far for food while they're worrying about their nest. And she said one time a guest came by and was like, wow, I didn't realize their poop was so big.
Oh, no.
So, not every zoo guest gets, understands it, but I thought that was super funny, and it was a great story, and I learned something new. I didn't know burrowing owls did that. And then when it dries out, they can use some of it for nesting material. And I said, they don't have a great sense of smell, so they don't mind. But yes, it was a great story. And there's my poop story.
Poop story.
That's amazing. I love it so much. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Well, there you have it, folks. Nicki Boyd, San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, and Red Panda Network, and the Red Panda Safe Program. I was so excited to be able to talk about that and, to kind of answer some of the questions that we've had even on the podcast brought up about, oh, wait, why do we need a safe when there's an SSB? And now we know the answer, and it's a really good one, y'all. I'm really happy about that. So real quick, since I didn't say this at the beginning of the episode, don't forget to make sure you're following along. Make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these episodes. And make sure that you're following along at Rossifari on Insta and Facebook and X and all the places. And at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine. And then that's really all I have to say for this week, except, of course, speaking of red pandas, we got to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons who are our top level supporters for the podcast. And those are Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. And as I always like to say at the end of every podcast, don't forget, y'all, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.